So this would have been back in the early 90s, like 91, 92, I guess. We had moved to the North Park neighborhood in Chicago, which is a really nice neighborhood. We were off Foster Avenue between Kimball and Kedzie. And we were living in a very old two-story building, uh, asphalt siding shingles. The landlady lived above us, and she was very eccentric, to say the least. Bit of a pack rat. And it was kind of a cool old house. Had a living room, dining room, built-in buffet, a little tiny bathroom with a clawfoot tub, kitchen, and two very small bedrooms. We were both working day jobs, and in the middle of the week, it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday night, probably about 2:30 in the morning, and Laura and I both woke up at the same time. We are just kind of laying there in the dark, and we're like, "Do you hear that?" And it's like, "Yeah," So I get up and I go out in the hallway and I hear running water. And I walk into the bathroom and the water in the sink is on. The hot and cold water is just blasting away, and I turn it off. And I continue to hear water, and I pull the shower curtain aside and the water's blasting away in the tub. And I turn it off and I still hear water, and I walk into the kitchen and the water's going there as well, and I turn it off and I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I check the back door and it's dead bolted from the inside. The chain is on, it's locked. Kitchen windows are locked and latched from the inside. Same with the dining room, living room. Front door locked, bolted, the whole thing. Kind of scratch my head a bit, go back into bed. Laura's waiting up for me, and she's like, what was it? And I explained what was going on with the water. I think it's poltergeists, and that wasn't actually that an outrageous statement, because periodically strange things had happened. We had a picture on the wall that would just randomly fall off, but the wire on the back was intact, the nail wasn't bent, anything like that. Things would be moved in the house, and we didn't know if it was like the landlady coming down doing weird stuff. But, we always kept it locked when we weren't there. We even kept it locked when we were there. So when we decided it was poltergeists, I asked Laura what she wanted to do. And she said, well, we can do two things. We can either move, or, they're welcome to stay as long as they clean up after us, because they're going to have to earn their own weight and pay their way. And she announced that out loud, and after that we never had another incident again. So even the supernatural don't want to pick up after us.
Dead tired. I get it.
Dead tired. Dead sick of working.
It took me 80 years to finally go beyond the grave. I do it. More Halloween stories?
There's a couple of Halloween. There's one fall-related story. It took place at this time of year. It was several years ago, probably about maybe 15 years ago or so. And it was a Sunday morning. At the time I was working weekends, overnight shift in the hospital. And I'd come home on my routine usually on Sunday mornings. As I'd come home, we would watch the DVR version of Saturday Night Live from the night before. I'd have something to eat, go to sleep, get up, go back to work, and do it again. And one of our nieces, Brittany, was living with us at the time, and I came home and she and Laura were both up. And we were going to watch Saturday Night Live, and I let our dogs out into the backyard. And at the time, we had Mocha and Aoife, the original gangsters of dogs. Mocha was a Bernese Mountain Dog who definitely commanded a presence. She was like the queen of the dog park. Aoife was an Irish Wolfhound, beautiful dog, wheat-colored, gorgeous, very sensitive, very gentle.
Mm-hmm.
I let them out in the backyard, and our backyard's fenced in. And I hear the dogs kind of kicking up a ruckus, and I'm like calling on them, and they're not coming in. So I go out, and Aoife has got a squirrel, and she is shaking this thing, just shaking it and shaking it. And I'm trying to get her to drop it and let it go. And I'm like, drop it, drop it, drop it, and she won't do it. And I kind of grabbed her collar and yelled at her, and she dropped the squirrel, and Mocha immediately picks it up and starts shaking it because she wanted her turn too. I was like, God, dogs, quit. So I bribed them to come in with treats. I was like, treats, and they dropped the squirrel, ran inside, and I explained to Laura and Brittany what happened, and they were like, oh, okay. And I went back outside and looked, and here's this poor squirrel on the ground convulsing. And I'm like, this is just absolutely horrible. So I came back in and told him, I said, I'm going to get a shovel. I'm going to unalive the squirrel and put him out of his misery.
Thank you for saying the TikTok friendly version.
I have watched a video or two. So my master plan is to go out and facilitate the squirrel in moving on to his next level of existence. He's going to level up. And Brittany begs me not to do it. She's like, no, don't do that. That's really cruel. That's really mean. And I kind of capitulated, and I was like, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll watch Saturday Night Live. If the squirrel's still there, I will help him along. And if he's not, then good for him. So we watched Saturday Night Live, and it was probably a pretty good show. And then I'm like, okay, time to get the shovel. I go walking up, and the squirrel is gone. And I'm like, son of a gun. It's a squirrel miracle. This is a great thing.
It's alive.
So, yeah, so I come back in, and I'm all happy, and I'm like, hey, you're right. The squirrel got better and ran off. And Brittany's like, see, I told you. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. Well, now the dogs want to go back out. And the first thing they do, of course, is run to where the squirrel had been. And they're sniffing around and sniffing around and sniffing around. And then they run to the far side of the yard. And I look, and about 2.5 feet away from them is a tree. It's just a sapling. This thing can't be 1.5 inches in diameter. And it's probably 5 feet high. And about 2.5 feet up on this tree is the squirrel. And he's like inching around this little tiny tree, trying to hide behind it and keep the tree between it and the dogs. And they're pretty oblivious to the squirrel at this point, but I'm like, I know the second they see it, it's game on, So I'm trying to coax the dogs back. I'm calling them, and I'm, they're not coming, and I'm like, like imploring them. It's like, I'll get you treats. And finally on the word treats, they kind of look up, but they still weren't coming. And I'm like, I know what I'll do. I'll get a stone, I'll throw it, I'll scare the squirrel. He'll run up the tree, jump over the fence, go into the neighbor's yard, and be safe. So I come down the steps, I find a stone, and I throw it, and it lands in some dry leaves, which startle the dogs a little bit. They kind of look up. The squirrel takes about 1.5 strides up the tree, stops, lets go with its front paws, keeps holding on with its back paws, and falls straight back like a ladder, and hits the ground with a thud, which startles the dogs. And then I'm like, treats! And they come running in, and I'm like, I'm done. I don't care about the squirrel at this point. I'm going to sleep. I've had it. So I go to sleep. I get up 5-6 hours later. And of course, I want to go outside and look for the squirrel. And he's gone. So apparently the squirrel made it. But after that, with the dogs we had the Irish Wolfhound, we had the Bernese Mountain Dog. At one point, we fostered an English Mastiff. When we got squirrels in the yard, it was like, I think it was like a squirrel gang initiation, where if they could make it through our yard, they were in the gang, And some made it, some did not.
They got red tips in their afros.
Exactly. You got the red-tailed squirrel. I got to watch out for those gray squirrels. They're bad. They're bad. As I may have mentioned before, we have a few dogs and have had a few dogs, and we've kind of become the people where it's like, hey, could you watch my dog? And that's the last time you see them. In some cases. And this is like 4 years ago. So like 2019, 2020. We were helping a neighbor who's quite a bit older, and one of the things he was doing is he would rent rooms in his home to people, to help them out. And a woman came to look at a room, and she had brought her dog with her, which is a pug beagle mix named Buddy. And he was a little wheezing puggle, with big bulging eyes, kind of cute in his own way. And she looked at the room and, ultimately didn't rent it. But a month or so after she looked at it, she came spoke to my wife, had brought the dog, and asked if we could watch the dog for a month. And she would pay us. And we were like, yeah, he's kind of a cute little guy. And she had various reasons as to why, it would work best for her if we did that. So we did. And 1 month came and went, and then a second month came, and she sent some more money, and then a third month and a fourth month, and we didn't hear from her again. That was like in April or earlier. And now it's the end of October. We still have this dog, and he is a good little dog, but he's just not a great dog for us. We're more big dog people, I would say. Not to be snobby or anything, but we just prefer larger dogs. And it was trick or treat. And trick or treat at our house is an event.
Sorry.
We put out an 8-foot table. We put out a canopy. I put out a little sun tent. I take photographs of all the trick or treaters. We get upwards of 300 kids and adults and dogs, and we do full-size candy bars. And it was quite a great day. And then towards the end of trick or treat, it was like it's always the Sunday before Halloween in the town that we live in. A friend of ours that we know came and brought her daughters, and they didn't come just to trick or treat, but her daughters wanted to see our Great Dane, Miss Georgia. So my wife said, well, get Georgia, bring her out. So I go in the house and I get her, and the other dogs are barking and howling, and they all want to come out, and it's like no, and I'm trying to keep them in and get this giant dog out. And as I've got the door open and the Great Dane is kind of wedged in the door, and I'm thinking, I'm slick, this is going to work. The puggle comes bolting out between her legs and just shoots out into the yard. And he's running around the front yard having the time of his life. He is just zipping around. There's people. Kids are squealing. Our friend is laughing. And she's like, oh my God, I love that little guy. And he's just ripping around and ripping around and ripping around. She's laughing harder and harder and harder. And our niece again, Brittany, talks to her and she goes, they'd probably just give you that dog. He's not really working out so well. And my wife looks at her and she goes, oh my God, it was just your birthday yesterday. If you want him, take him home. Tell your husband you can't bring him back because he's a present. You don't have a gift receipt. I went and got his crate. I got his blanket. I got his toys. I got his bowl. I got his leash. Put him in his car. He never even looked back at us. He just rode off like a gangster. She gets to her house. She goes in and she talks to her husband and she goes, I got something in the car you need to see. He's like, what's that? And she goes, well, I got a dog. And he's like, I can't believe you did that. We've already got like this 90-pound pit bull. So he's like, just let me see what you got. And he goes out and he opens up the door and he looks at it. And this is a dog who I had nicknamed or renamed Buscemi because he had a striking resemblance to the actor of that same name. So she introduces her husband to him, and his response is, oh my God, I love that ugly little thing. Brings him in. The dog falls madly in love with their pit bull, who falls madly in love with them. And the kids loved him, and he lived the rest of his days in that household, and he was a happy little camper. But that was probably one of the most successful trick-or-treats we had.
Nice.
So about 15 years ago, we were invited to a Halloween party a few blocks from our house in Waukegan through a guy that's substantially younger than we are that we had known from, hanging out at a bar. And we got all decorated up. I wore a long gray wig that I had gotten from my sister-in-law, Luann, and put yellow makeup on my face and like black eye makeup, black lips. And it looked kind of macabre and not at all like myself with my short, curly gray hair and glasses.
It's kind of funny how you kind of grew into it.
Yeah, my hair now actually is probably longer than that wig was, which is somewhat ironic and funny. I had a white tuxedo shirt, a black sport coat, black pants, and that was my costume. I don't know what I went as, but that's what I went as. Laura went as a candy skull, basically. She had full makeup. She had a short, bright red wig. And she had her Malice in Wonderland costume on, which is really cute. And she wasn't wearing her glasses. And before we went to the party, we went to a bar down the street that we had gone to for several years, once or twice a week for like open mic nights for food. We go there. The guy tending bar does not know it's us until he hears our voices, and he was completely shocked. So we were pretty much unrecognizable to people that knew us. So we had a drink there, heard a little bit of music, go to the party, have a great time. They had a band, they had a lot of decorations. It was really a fun time. And we were there, probably later than was sane, but you know, that's us, and we're night folks. And then decided to go out for breakfast afterwards, and we were lucky enough that things were still open 24 hours around town occasionally. And we went to Gojo's, which we had not been to in 10 years. And we're still in costume, still in full makeup. We sit down, the waitress comes over, hands us menus, looks at us, and looks at me and goes, you guys having breakfast or dinner? It's like breakfast. She goes, okay, you like 2 eggs, sunny side up, sausage, hash browns, double order of whole wheat toast, and Diet Coke? And as my mouth is dropping open, she looks at my wife and she goes, you want 2 eggs over easy, hash browns, you prefer bacon but not too crisp, and you want white toast, grape jelly, and milk with your meal, but you'll start with a glass of water. And we were like, yeah, how do you know that? She goes, I remember you guys from the last time you were here. And I said, that was over 10 years ago, probably. She goes, yeah, it's just a thing I can do. I don't know how she does that. I don't know if she's still there. But I'm tempted to go back in there like tonight or tomorrow to see if she remembers me and what my breakfast order is, because it was just freakishly weird, you know?
Well, after this, a lot more people are going to know your order. Did you know that?
That's fine. And then a couple of years ago, I went to Brown's Chicken. Just
All right.
Fried chicken's my crack. You know, I admit it. I have a problem. I have an addiction issue with fried chicken, and I hadn't been to Brown's for a while. So I go to the Brown's or Church's Chicken. I'm sorry, go to the Church's Chicken in Waukegan for lunch. It's probably about 2 in the afternoon, and it's first week in November. And this is back when I just started growing my hair out, so it's probably down to maybe my shoulders at this point. And it's rather wild on a breezy day. And I go in and I'm standing at the counter for a while and nobody's really taking care of me. And then this young lady comes up, she goes, well, somebody needs to take this man's order. And I was like, thank you. And she takes my order and then she looks at me and she goes, you know, you kind of look like that guy from Back to the Future. I kind of laughed a little bit because 3 days before I had won a costume contest as Doc Brown. And when she said, you look like that guy from, you know, did anybody ever tell you you look like that guy from Back to the Future? My response was, well, I have heard it once or twice. And I got my food.
Well, that's it on the Halloween special.
Wait until Christmas. No, wait until
God.
wait until Thanksgiving when we talk about turkey and tequilas, or tequila and turkeys.
Look forward to that.
Actually, there's times where we just forget the turkey.
Great way to end Halloween, ain't it?
I love it.
All right.
Cheers to Halloween.